Hello, I'm Father Louis Scurti with Friends of the Word. We're here today to share with you some concepts from the Scriptures and apply them to our lives. This program is the Weekday Word. I'm a marriage and family therapist, besides a priest and an artist and a few other things. And as a marriage and family therapist, I always focus on, obviously, working with families. Sometimes the families I'm working with are not Christian at all. So I don't bring in, because of my requirements as a therapist, I don't bring in God to the sessions. However, I go with the intention of the presenting family, couple, family, it doesn't matter who they are. However, there are times in which we have to emphasize, as we're working with families, the dignity of the individual, okay? And that's what I'd like to focus on today. Mental health and how significant it is and how sensitive a topic it is. Now, mental health affects everybody, those who are, quote, healthy and those who are ill mentally in any way. There's a book called the DSM, it's Diagnostic Statistics Manual. It covers every kind of illness that there is, mental illness and behavioral illness that there is. And it tries to be all-encompassing. And it's good. It's a good manual for the therapist, for the doctor, for anybody who's working with people. Because once we find out what the label is, once we find out what the condition is, there's a method in which we can address it. However, I want to address sometimes the fact that mental illness is on our streets. People who've not gotten any help, people who have not received help. And they might be talking to themselves in the street, they might be distracted, they might be sometimes a danger to themselves or others. We have to be people who are respectful of one another, and we as Christians have such an obligation to do that. We have to be respectful of one another because we are created in the likeness and image of God. And our mandate is from Christ. The selection of the gospel I'd like to use today is from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 22. The Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, so he gathered all together with them. And one of them, a scholar of the law, tested Jesus by asking, "Teacher, which commandment of the law is the greatest?" Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with your soul, and with your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law and the prophets depend on these two commandments." The gospel of the Lord. Jesus was being cornered by the political entity of the day, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He was being cornered because the Jews had hundreds of laws. So out of all the hundreds of laws, Jesus chose that one very, very important one that is often called the Shema Israel, the Lord your God, how important that is. The Lord your God is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart, mind, and soul. But Jesus does something else. You can't live in relationship to God without living in relationship to people. So he takes that and he says the second, although they only wanted the one, he makes them one commandment. The second is like the first because it says, love the Lord your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself. 3 points. Loving God, loving our neighbor, loving ourselves. So the Christian looks at the world and looks at people, and our neighbor might be laying in the street, our neighbor might be in the hospital, our neighbor might be the doctor on the other side of the desk or the patient. Doesn't matter. We're talking specifically in the area of mental health. So we have to love the Lord, your God, our God, with our whole selves, our mind, our thinking capacity, our soul, our spirituality, and our neighbors. And when our neighbors, whether it's a family member or whether it's a stranger, is suffering mental illness, how can I love him or her? Don't go blaming the person for being there, although I was going to say being nasty, but sometimes people are just nasty. We'll put that into another program. But when a person is suffering mental illness, sometimes we can't always calculate it as a family member. And I often tell my couples, don't be your husband or wife's therapist. Be the spouse. But parents can observe it in their children. Mood changes, mood swings, depression, isolation, not enjoying the things that a person normally would enjoy, whether it's the children, your spouse, or even yourself. If it happens that you feel that something's wrong with the way I'm thinking, something's wrong with the way he or she or my family members are behaving and thinking, open the question, open the topic. Illness is illness. If someone was sneezing, you know what to do. If someone broke a leg, you know what to do. Well, someone's behaving, that's why this is called behavioral illness. Someone's behaving in an odd way, open the topic. Address it. Why? Well, for your own sanity. 2, because you love that person with your whole heart, soul, and mind, as you love God and as you love yourself. So it's not selfish to take care of the person who is ill, but it is wise. It's a good choice as a Christian. It's a good choice as a person, a human being, to reach out to the people who suffer mental illness, to refer them to physicians, therapists, psychiatrists. Sometimes that initial phone call is challenging. Sometimes, and most therapists require the patient to make the call. Sometimes that can't happen. So be strong enough, be honest enough with your loved one or the stranger if you're in the right conditions and circumstances, and refer him or make the phone call for him or her. I'll go with you. Accompany them. Let them know it's not such a scar or a stigma to be ill mentally, nor is it a stigma to be ill physically, nor is it a stigma to be ill with a broken leg. Illness is illness. And we are Christians who are meant to love the Lord our God with our whole heart, our soul, and our mind. And Jesus says, this is the law. This is how the law is summarized. If you are a Christian, love the Lord your God. If you're not, love yourself, your neighbor, and God. This has been Father Louis Scurti with Friends of the Word. We thank you for joining us on this weekday word. And if you'd like to contact me, Father Lou Scurti at hotmail.com.